Time to rock and roll!
Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. Legendary cards are an essential survival tool in Hearthstone. You can play some budget decks that ignore legendary cards, but without using the rarest cards you won't be able to experience the full variety of strategies and become competitive. There are currently 124 legendary cards in the standard format. With a strictly limited amount of resources, players are forced to approach the crafting of cards extremely rationally, especially considering the fact that most of them are used in a competitive environment.
In this video, we will identify the most useful cards for crafting, as well as tools that are completely useless and can be safely disenchanted in conditions of emergency.
Traditionally, we have collected a ton of statistics for each card to help you determine the best options for collecting. You will have the opportunity to see how the usefulness of the new legendary cards from the Whizbang expansion changes over the past month and how they compare to other cards. Our utility index algorithm summed up all the data from the HS Replay and HS Guru sites and impartially determined the most useful cards according to a variety of criteria. On the board you see the main factors and the percentage of their influence on the final result. In addition to popularity and efficiency, important indicators are the usefulness of cards for Wild, as well as the flexibility of a card for Standard and the importance of a card for a particular class.
The higher the utility index coefficient, the more reasons there are to craft a card. In addition, the algorithm identified cards that have no alternatives and must be in every player's collection.
Let's start with completely useless cards for both game formats. This list of cards consists of tools that have just over 0% popularity at low ranks. Just like a month ago, all these cards have 0% utility in a competitive environment. It seems that due to the lack of cards in the collection, new and returning players are trying to find uses for the tools they caught in the packs.
But not all of these cards were hopelessly bad. In the past, many of them even occupied a niche in competitive play or were part of active experimentation. The worst card is DJ Manastorm, as it failed to find a place even in experimental builds after release. It is unlikely that this will change in the future. Another very bad card is Rhythm Dancer Riza. Even the buff couldn't increase its usefulness. In turn, Tony King of Piracy was killed by the nerf. The rest of the cards are not completely hopeless, but the likelihood that they will return to the big game is extremely small.
Let's now move on to cards with very little utility. The utility index of these tools ranges from 1 to 10%. In the current circumstances, these are very weak cards that are slightly more noticeable at lower ranks. The most dramatic changes occurred in the last month with General Vezax and Gunslinger Kurtrus, which lost almost 50% of their usefulness as they disappeared from niche meta decks. Mimaron was one of the best cards for a long time, but after rotation it became almost useless. The next category contains just a few cards. These are very niche tools, the usefulness of which we estimate from 10 to 30%. Game Master Nemsi earned a spot in this category due to its popularity in experimental Warlock decks in the Wild format. Hammett has carved out a noticeable niche in Hunter strategies at low ranks. Geppetto is quite prominent in experimental and fan builds in both formats. Shoplifter Goldbeard and Botface are components for niche meta decks with very low efficiency. Let's just say these cards still have conditional usefulness but are dangerously close to extinction.
Here is another list of cards whose usefulness exceeds 30%. Most of these cards fill a niche in the competitive environment but have insufficiently high effectiveness and low popularity, which does not exceed 1%.
Toyrantis and the Replicator Inator are new cards from the mini-set that players continue to look for use cases. Wheel of Death and Loken Jailer of Yogg Saron are rapidly losing usefulness after the nerf and are gradually disappearing from the metagame. Wheel Warlock has no chance of returning to the metagame, as the class has several super effective strategies. The most promising card is Thorim Stormlord, who returned to the meta as part of Overload Shaman. At the moment, this is a very niche deck that has satisfactory effectiveness.
And finally, cards that lack a few points to get into the main part of our list. These are still niche cards whose popularity is approximately 1%, but they demonstrate more satisfactory efficiency. In addition, most of them occupy niches in the Wild format. Fanatum Lord of the Opera is a Shard of the Wheel archetype that is slowly disappearing from Standard, but the card has found a promising place in Quest Warlock in the Wild format. Overall, The card lost almost 40 utility points in a month and found itself on the fringes of the metagame. Also, very dramatic changes affected Seif. One of the best mage cards has almost left the metagame within the rainbow archetype. The deck is still effective at lower ranks but is no longer competitive enough. Moreover, players prefer to use the spell archetype. Flint Firearm is quite popular and shows good performance, but has disappeared from the most popular builds and has become more of a niche option tool. All of the legendary spells on the list are components of niche meta decks. You should be very careful about cards in this category, as they have the potential to increase their usefulness in the future. Each of them had their finest hour and were a noticeable component of the metagame.
It's time to talk about the 60 best cards in the current competitive environment. They are all part of the metagame and their usefulness exceeds 50%. We have prepared very detailed statistics about each card. Here are some examples.
In 60th place is Tier. Over the past month, the usefulness of the card has decreased by only 1%. This is an extremely niche card used in Earthen strategy in both formats. Only 3% of paladins use this card. Overall popularity in standard and wild formats is less than 1%, but the archetype demonstrates good effectiveness. The average win rate reaches 56% on the road to legend, but at high ranks the effectiveness decreases. But despite good efficiency, the archetype is on the verge of extinction since the paladin, like the warlock, has two strong strategies that do not leave room for balanced archetypes. The card's prospects in other modes are unclear, as Duels mode has been removed from the game and its potential usefulness for the Twist format is impossible to predict.
Puppet Master Dorian has slowly started to make its way into the metagame, but builds that try to adapt the card are not effective enough in the standard format. The card is used in different strategies, which allows it to gain a few extra utility points for its flexibility. The card shows more potential in the wild format. Dorian has had good success with Tog Druid, XL Druid and XL Shaman.
We hope that our approach and statistics are very clear to understand. We offer a quick review without commentary of the top 60 useful legendary cards and will dwell in more detail on the most necessary tools.
You will be remade.
Freedom is fleeting. Your will is my whim.
You will break as we have been broken!
Don't use your head. Use mine.
Gaze into the horizon. Then you will see what is real.
Fools following a false order.
Anyone need a bottle? Witness the wonders of Whiz-Bang's workshop.
Amuse me with your tales of victory. Outsiders, you dare step into the domain of Earth. I'm gonna punch ya!
I play, therefore I'm fun.
After all I've done, the future will not be lost.
Need help? Let's give you some extra time.
Fill the skies with a cascade of sparkles.
I do say, what is this dreadful place? Let's show these fine folks some Badlands hospitality.
I didn't intentionally pursue leadership, but I find it quite suits me. How long can you hold your breath?
gems escaped from Drilly the Kid.
I bestow these gifts upon the world.
Gather round, everyone. It's time for a celebration.
Your fate is bound to me.
Double, double. Toys in trouble.
Great harvest, eh, Pa?
Yes, Ma.
My eyes aflame, my cursed name.
Hey, you! Install these for me, won't yez?
A curse of frauds upon you. It's really a blessing.
Stand and fight in darkest night!
The Grim Totem have had enough of your noise! No matter the danger, I'll always chase a good discovery.
None can stand against Tashalak. The toy store belongs to the Titans. Make room for more boom! Impressed by my thunderous display?
You summoned me for this. Disgraceful.
I will not forsake you. You have earned an eternity of torment.
It's time to talk about cards whose usefulness was 90% or more. In 12th place is Inventor Boom. Over the past month, the card's usefulness has remained stable. If you love Garrosh, you must have this card, as it is one of the main win conditions for most warrior decks. The card is used in the wild format, but mainly in experimental decks with unimpressive effectiveness. This is the only drawback. The utility of Amon Thul continues to be extremely high. The card is used in every second priest build. In addition, the card is very useful in control priest builds in the wild format.
For the last 6 months, the usefulness of Yogg-Saron Unleashed has not dropped below 90%. The card is an extremely popular and universal control tool in both formats. The card remains the only compelling reason to purchase the Fall of Uldur mini set. It seems that Symphony of Sins is an indispensable tool for Gul'dan. Over 80% of warlocks use this card in their decks. This is a record figure among class legendary cards. But we want to draw your attention to an interesting fact. The most popular strategies of the class demonstrate more impressive effectiveness compared to the effect that the card has on the outcome of the match. In other words, the strategies are too powerful on their own.
Photographer Fizzle continues to be at the top. The card effect has proven to be extremely useful in a variety of archetypes. Next on the list is Reska the Pit Boss. This card has increased its usefulness a bit over the last month. The card has too powerful an effect to ignore. This is one of the best cards in Standard, but it failed to gain more points due to the lack of stable Death Knight decks in the wild format.
Hawkgar the Putrid separated from the Sludge strategy synergies and has become a universal tool for most warlock decks. Increasing the card's influence and class popularity led to an increase in utility. The Primus continues to be the most powerful Titan in the game and one of the best Death Knight cards. The card is useful for 70% of builds within the class. The only downside is still the lack of specific builds for the wild format. Ignis continues to be an extremely effective and popular tool in both formats. In the standard format, the card is used in 9 meta decks. Players are very lucky that this card is free.
ETC Band Manager continues to be a useful and effective card in Standard but is a real star in Wild. The utility index has not changed over the month and continues to be almost 100%. This means that the card has no flaws and is an extremely important tool for the competitive environment. This is another free card that is available for free. It is important for us to remind you that from time to time developers give players key cards as a gift.
In the first place there are 2 cards. One of them is Reno Lone Ranger. The card is key to many control archetypes. Players can only ignore this card if they play primarily aggressive decks. The effect of the card is crazy. This leads to the fact that classes that did not receive additional tools for Highlander decks try to adapt the card in their strategies. One example is the Highlander Death Knight, but the card has one hidden drawback. Highlander decks are traditionally extremely expensive.
It is worth recognizing that Hearthstone players now live in the Ziliax era. If Reno is the key card for control archetypes, then Ziliax is the key card for most decks in the game and for almost all strategies. We found a card in over 30 meta archetypes. This is an insane amount. The card's life cycle has just begun, but we have the impression that the card has the potential to become one of the best cards in the history of the game. It will be extremely difficult for you to ignore Ziliax, as it is truly the best survival tool in modern Hearthstone.
Also note that this is only the second card from the Whizbang expansion to achieve over 90% utility according to our algorithm. The life cycle of cards from the expansion will be almost 2 years, which means that new tools will have to prove their usefulness and effectiveness over a long period of time.
We really hope that our data will be useful to you and you will be able to find the optimal crafting card for yourself. Unfortunately, due to renewed Russian missile attacks on Ukraine's energy system, creating new videos in the context of a systemic lack of electricity is becoming increasingly difficult. But I hope that we will still have the opportunity to at least periodically publish new videos. Moreover, we have several very unusual topics that we would like to discuss with you in the near future.
Finally, we can't wait to hear your opinion about the most popular card. We are extremely impressed with Ziliax's results. The developers managed to bring back the iconic character of the game in a special way. Dear friends, do you think that the reincarnated version of the card is the best in Hearthstone history?
Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.